Peace, this is King Noble, Black Supremacy. And with this particular video, I want to talk about how there is nothing sacred or profane about sex in and of itself. And the deeper part is that there is nothing sacred about sex in and of itself. What is sacred is consciousness. What is sacred is supreme Black God consciousness, Black supreme consciousness. Without that, any act is profane, is a desecration, and loses all spiritual value or significance. Any act, any sexual act done in supreme Black God consciousness can be a sacred act, can be transformed into a sacred act. The only sacredness about the universe or anything in the universe is supreme Black God consciousness, period. Nothing else in the universe has any value. None of the material world has zero value. You have to embrace this. You have to realize this. The only value in this universe can be seen or perceived, weighed or measured is out of supreme Black God consciousness, period. A lot of times we worship the material world. We worship different aspects of the material world. We worship different types of acts. We worship different types of behaviors, different types of orientations. And the ones that we don't worship, we shun or we are against. We put a lot of energy into the physical universe. We believe in the physical world. We are obsessed with the physicality. That's why we don't come into full Black God consciousness, because of our obsession with the material world. We have to realize that there is no value in the material world in and of itself. It has no meaning. It has no significance. The only thing that brings significance to this material world is supreme Black God consciousness. That's it. Outside of that, you live in the realm of that void, the realm of meaninglessness, the realm of nothingness, emptiness. There is nothing here. The value that is placed in this material world in and of itself is only meant to distract you from Black divinity and get you caught up and sidetracked into something that has nothing to do with Black God consciousness. Nothing to do with consciousness at all. You forget that consciousness is the creator, that consciousness is the manifester, that consciousness is the author, because you get so caught up into the material world and so fascinated. You've been sold on some particular aspect or dynamic or dimension of the material world that you can no longer even be conscious at all, less than to see the supreme, sublime, divine Black reality. So we have made sex so sacred. We have made sex God. We worship God. We worship a different type of sexuality. And then we've made a certain type of sexuality our devil or the great evil. And the devil is a certain type of God, a demigod. The devil is equal to God on the other side. So the devil in most people's world, in most people's perception and consciousness, is as equally powerful as God. To be a devil, to be something, a force or energy that could rival the existence of God. So the devil is somewhat like a God. So to make something extremely profane is equivalent to worship, is reverse worship. It's giving the same energy of worship in reverse. And to make something sacred is to worship it, to venerate it. It's to make it a God other than God. It's idolatry. So some people have made sex their God because they don't realize that their consciousness creates their reality. They've made the physical world in different dimensions and aspects and organizations and combinations and composites of the material world. They've turned it into their God. They've turned it into their shrine. They've become unconscious due to their focus by being distracted and obsessed with the material world. Sex can only be sacred when it is done under supreme black God consciousness, where the focus is nothing but on supreme black God consciousness, is on black divinity, a black divine reality, black perfection, black harmony. If you're having sex out of that perception, black rulership, black sovereignty, black empowerment, black supremacy, if you're having sex out of that, then your sex becomes sacred. No matter what type of sex it is, no matter when you have sex, no matter what position it is, no matter with who or how many, it does not matter. If it is not done out of black God consciousness, out of reverence for the divine supreme blackness, then it is profane. Then it is sinful. It is undesirable. It is unpermissible. It is prohibited. I don't care what type of sex it is and with who it is. Because if it's not done out of supreme black God consciousness, then it's done out of worship of the material world, out of some material mode of reality, out of some type of circumstance that is changeable, that is mutable, that is not real, that is an illusion that you are attached to. Only out of having sex in supreme black God consciousness can you do it in the most unattached, most selfless, most giving, most compassionate manner. Any other way is filled with attachment that leads to anger, jealousy, envy, resentment, and is attachment to a false construct of reality that leads to pain and suffering. It does not praise the holy man in you. It does not praise the holy woman in the being that you're with. It only praises the ego and one's attachment to how they appear in this illusionary world, how they appear into the material world, how much of an ego that they are building in this physical realm. That's what these acts are out of. They're not out of supreme black God consciousness. So whatever act you're doing that is not within the act of supreme black God consciousness is not a sacred act. You can hang that up. I don't care what it is. You could be burning incense. You can be in the holiest of holiest places. You could be fasting. You could be meditating. If you're not doing it out of supreme black God consciousness, there is no divinity in your act. It is useless. It is futile. And it is only feeding the ego of death, of black self-hatred, of false premise, falsehood. So sex in and of itself is not sacred. And without its sacred compartments of self-realization and being completely aware and conscious of black divinity inside of it, it is dangerous. And one should become celibate until they can see nothing but black God consciousness and see nothing but black divinity. You should be celibate. You have sex with no one. You should be in no relationship until your mind is completely saturated and infused with black God consciousness, where it escapes your body through your aura, where it pours from you. Until you have reached that point, you cannot have sex. You cannot really enjoy anything in the most balanced and meiotic and harmonious way in the material world. You cannot enjoy it. You cannot appreciate it. It is out of place. It is improper. It is inauspicious. Sex in and of itself is not sacred. There's no sacredness to it. And it can lead you to hell in the material world. It can lead you to being held, caught up, trapped, locked into. It could trap you and block your energies and block the expansion of your consciousness. And it can start to generate a false reality and create nightmares in your reality, where you no longer can perceive divinity and the individuals that you said you love dearly in the most selfless, compassionate way. You now have hatred for them. You hate those of whom you love because you inauspiciously connected with them. You connected with them out of the wrong vibration and the wrong frequency. You did not connect with them as a deity, as a God, and connect to the God within them. You only participated in a very materialistic dance of imprisonment with them that you call sex. I don't care if you have one mate or multiple mates. There is nothing sacred about sex in and of itself, but can be made sacred through consciousness. Consciousness is the sacred generator. It generates that which is sacred. And that which brings one to consciousness over and over again is the most sacred act that one could participate in. If it doesn't bring you into consciousness over and over again, if it doesn't remind you or make you remember the you that you are, then that act is sacrilegious. It is sinful. It is pure evil. Even if this society says it is a good act, even if society supports it and everybody smiles in your face, if it does not bring you into mindfulness of the divinity of who you are and those of whom you've come in contact with, if it doesn't bring you into that realization as a permanent state of being, then it is pure evil. It is pure evil. And there is no pure evil act on earth. Any act done with the mindfulness of who you are, with the consciousness of who you are as a being, is a divine act. We all come from so many different circumstances and so many situations that we grew up in, with different value systems, different walks of life, different neighborhoods, countries, cities, different types of terrains. So our desires are different due to these physical lives and these circumstances that we have manifested ourselves into. Our values are different. Our perceptions are different from the jump. So our choices will be different. Our acts will be different. Our appreciations will be different. But one single cord that must run through all of them for all of us, one universal piece, is a call to supreme black consciousness for the melanated being. So no matter what the act is, no matter where you are at in the realm of relativity, every act, every motion, every breath you breathe must become a call to supreme black consciousness and the realization of black divinity. Every action must call you to that. In every moment, one must be mindful. One must be reawakened over and over again through every act, through every motion, through every word, through every blink, through every perception, through every inclination. One must be called to reawaken, to exist in the world of the awakened, where one perceives the divine reality in the here and now. And that's what makes this world sacred. And that's the only sacredness that is in this temporal reality. That is the only sacredness that can be obtained in this world of illusion, of relativity, of multiplicity. That you are reawakened to who you are in action. That God is the most mindful entity within your being, and that there's more God, that you're more awakened to the God and the divine within you and within this plane than you're awakened into the man and into the animal within you. Then you are attached, or then you are caught up in this material world. So sex is not sacred. That is a lie. Sexuality is not sacred. Divine consciousness is sacred. The mind of Black God consciousness, the thought, the contemplation, the mindfulness of Black God consciousness is the only sacred thing that can be implicated or that can emanate or be projected into this material world in all one's actions, in all one's ways. If you do not exist with this type of awareness, you will only become lost again, caught up into some materialistic illusion. And all of these attachments into any aspects and dimensions of the material world will lead to suffering and pain and frustration and agitation and fear and lack and doubt and limitation, entrapment and imprisonment on this plane. Nothing is sacred but the I am. Supreme Black God consciousness is the only sacred morsel or fiber on this plane. And that is the purpose of this plane, for you to reawaken and remember. And this is the stage for Supreme Black God consciousness. Sex is not sacred. Remove that. Nothing is sacred. Nothing. Everything can be desecrated that is material. Everything can be exploited, mispresented. Everything. So you cannot worship or find anything sacred of the material reality. It's what is infused and what is blended from the divine essence of who you are with the material world that makes it anything. You are the real value, the self, the true I am. This is King Noble Black Supremacy. Join my website, www.kingnobleuncensored.com. Donate and don't hate.